is of the north, and yonder, he said, gesturing towards a distant gate, is the entrance to the Manasizar River. The king's heart swelled with pride as Lomasa showed him the well-known region of Vaticanda, which lay adjacent to the gate of Vaihas. They walked on. Lomasa spoke of the remarkable thing that occurred here every yuga, the god Siva accompanied by Yuma, and his followers would manifest in this place, and people who desire welfare for their families. He said, propitiate the holder of the great bow Panika with sacrifices in the month of Chaitra. The king's eyes grew heavy with devotion as Lomasa showed him the sacred Tirtha called Ojjanika, where Vasistha and his wife Arundhati had found tranquility as they reached the end of their journey. In the scorching heat of a summer day, King Usanara sat on his throne surrounded by his attendants. A majestic hawk perched on a nearby tree, its piercing gaze fixed intently on the king. The hawk spoke in a voice that echoed through the land. All the kings of the earth were present. You, as a pious ruler. Wherefore, O prince, has thus stopped to perpetrate a deed not sanctioned by the ordinance? The king's eyes widened as he listened to the hawk's words. He knew that the bird was not just any ordinary creature, but one imbued with divine wisdom. The hawk continued, I have been sore afflicted with hunger. Do them not withhold from me that which hath been appointed by the deity for my food. The king's heart swelled with compassion as he looked at the pigeon trembling before him. Why dost thou not see that the highest merit is even in mine not surrendering it unto thee? The hawk asked, its eyes gleaming with a fire's intensity. It is therefore certainly blameworthy to forsake it. The king's mind was racing as he weighed his options. He knew that sparing the pigeon would be a noble act, but at what cost would not mean sacrificing his own virtue. A hawk pressed on, its words dripping with wisdom. A man can live long even after forsaking what is dearest to him, but he cannot do so after abstaining from food. The king's eyes widened as he listened to the hawk's reasoning. He knew that it was not just a matter of feeding one bird, but of upholding the cosmic order. The king's thoughts were interrupted by the hawk's next words. But, O prince, thou dost not protect many lives. The virtue that standeth in the way of another virtue, certainly no virtue at all, but in reality is unrighteousness. The king's mind was all whirl with conflicting emotions. As he struggled to make a decision, the hawk's words were like a gentle breeze on a summer day, carrying a scent of wisdom and virtue. The king knew that he had to think carefully about his next move. He looked at the pigeon, its eyes pleading for mercy, and then turned to the hawk. O best of birds, he said, as thou speakest words fraught with much good, I suspect thee to be Suparna, the monarch of birds. The king's suspicion was confirmed as the hawk replied, I am indeed Indra, O virtue's king. The air was filled with an otherworldly energy as the truth dawned on the king. He realized that he had been tested by the gods themselves, and that his virtue would be measured against their own. The king's mind reeled as he grasped the full import of what was happening. He knew that he had to make a choice between his own virtue and the lives of those seeking protection. In a distant land where the air was sweet with the scent of coconut trees, there lived a young man named Switetitu, son of Adalicut. His fame as an expert in sacred mantras had spread far and wide, and people will often seek his guidance on matters of the soul. One day, while meditating within the hermitage, he beheld the goddess Saraswati in her human form. With a humble heart, Switetitu requested her blessing. May I be endowed with the gift of speaker's fate. We have it. Switetitu's uncle Ashavitra was born to his mother Sujata and father Kada, a renowned sage who had mastered the Shastras. However, as Kada read the sacred texts aloud, the unborn child Ashavitra corrected him, saying, Father, your reading is incorrect. Enraged by this impertinence, Kada cursed his child, because you speak thus even in the womb. You shall be crooked in 8 parts of your body. Ashavitra was born with a twisted form, but his mind remained sharp and inquisitive. As he grew older, his uncles would take to befriended him, and together they would often engage in lively debates on sacred lore. However, the truth about Ashavitra's birth remained hidden from him, that his father was actually Kada, who had been defeated by Vandin in a controversy, and subsequently ground years passed, and Ashavitra reached his 12th year. One day, while sitting on his supposed father's lap, he was cruelly informed by Switetitu, This is not the lap of your father. The revelation pierced Ashavitra's heart like a dagger, and he wept bitterly, seeking answers from his mother Sujata. She revealed to him the truth about his birth, that his real father was God. Ashavitra's heart swelled with anger and sorrow, but he decided not to dwell on the past. Instead, he sought wisdom and knowledge, which led him to the magnificent sacrifice of King Janaka alongside his uncle Switek to Ashivikra, arrived at the grand event where they were met with a challenge from Vandin, who had defeated Kada years ago. The fierce determination in his eyes, Ashivikra addressed the king, "O great ruler, I have come to participate in this sacred debate. Let us see whose knowledge is superior, mine or that of Vandin." The stage was set for an epic confrontation between two brilliant minds with the sacred lord. When the Shastras hanging precariously in the balance ceased, the debate unfolded. Ashivikra's words dripped with wisdom, and his arguments were as sharp as a razor. Vandin, though well-versed in the science. In a scorching desert, Ashivikra and his companions journeyed towards the kingdom of Mithila, eager to witness the grand sacrificial ceremony of King Janaka. As they approached the entrance, a stern warder barred their path, citing the strict rules that only learned Brahmanas above a certain age were allowed to enter. Ashivikra, undaunted by the warder's refusal, stood tall and declared, "We are old in wisdom, not just years. We have observed sacred vows, mastered Vedic lore, and subdued our passions. Our knowledge is not bound by age." The warder, skeptical but intrigued, asked Ashivikra to demonstrate his understanding of the Supreme Being through a verse. Ashivikra smiled and began to recite an ancient hymn, its single letter unfolding into multifaceted meanings that left the warder stunned. True growth cannot be measured by physical development alone. Ashivikra explained, a tree may appear young but bear fruit, while one with gray hair may remain empty-headed. The warder, impressed despite himself, still refused to let them pass, citing the king's orders and Vandin's authority. Ashivikra, undeterred, requested an audience with King Janaka, asking him to inform Vandin of their arrival. The king, intrigued by Ashivikra's boldness, agreed to meet with him. As they entered the court, Ashivikra addressed the king, "O mighty ruler, I have come to witness your sacrifice and engage in a dispute with the learned men. May I prove my worth?" The king, amused by Ashivikra's confidence, asked him to demonstrate his knowledge of the sacred wheel, which had 30 divisions, 12 parts, 24 joints, and 360 spokes. Ashivikra responded, "May that ever-moving wheel protect you," and began a series of riddles, each one more complex than the last. The king, impressed by Ashivikra's wit and knowledge, asked him to identify the god who rode the wind like a charioteer and what creatures he beget. Ashivikra replied, "The god is Indra, and his children are the sun and the moon." The king then posed another riddle, "What does not close its eyes while sleeping? What moves not even when born? What has no heart? And what increases in speed?" Ashivikra responded with a series of analogies, each one more clever than the last. The king was amazed by Ashivikra's mastery of language and his ability to think on his feet. He declared, "You are no ordinary boy. I grant you admittance to the ceremony. Vandin is waiting for you." In the grand assembly of kings, where monarchs of unparalleled power had gathered, Ashivikra stood out as a formidable presence. He searched for Vandin, the self-proclaimed master of controversy, but his opponent remained elusive, like a swan gliding effortlessly across vast waters. Undeterred, Ashivikra declared, "I am like a raging fire, unstoppable and unyielding. You will not be able to keep pace with me, O Vandin." The assembly held its breath as the two opponents began their intellectual duel. Lomasa narrated that Ashivikra thundered in the assembly, his words echoing through the halls of Janaka's magnificent sacrifice. "Do you have the courage to answer my questions?" Ashivikra challenged Vandin. The latter, confident in his own abilities, retorted, "One fire burns brightly, one sun shines forth, and one hero, Indra, conquers all enemies." As the debate raged on, the two opponents traded blows, each countering the other's arguments with precision, and with Ashivikra posited that numbers held significance in various aspects of life. 4 asramas for Brahmanas, 4 orders performing sacrifices, and 4 cardinal points. Vandin countered with his own examples. 5 fires, 5 meters, and 5 sacred rivers. The battle of wits continued, each opponent trying to outdo the other. Ashivikra spoke of 6 cows as a gratuity in establishing the sacred fire, while Vandin claimed 7 domesticated animals and 7 wild animals. The numbers game went on, with neither side yielding an inch. 12 months composed the year. 12 layers made up a foot of the meter Jagisthai, and 12 aditi as shone brightly in the heavens. Just when it seemed that the debate would never end, Vandin fell silent, unable to continue his counter-arguments. Ashivikra supplied the final part of the verse, revealing the 13th lunar day as auspicious, 13 islands on earth and 13 sacrifices presided over by Kezi assembly erupted into a tumultuous uproar with Brahmanas, approaching Ashivakra in reverence, paying homage to his intellectual prowess. Ashivakra declared that Vandan should meet the same fate he had inflicted upon other Brahmanas, being cast into the waters of the sea. But Vandan revealed a shocking truth. He was the son of King Varuna, and his father's sacrifice extended over 12 years as the assembly watched in awe Janaka's magnanimity shone forth as he worshipped Ashivakra. With joined hands, the latter retorted that Vandan had suppressed Vedic truths through false arguments. But today, he had been defeated by Ashivakra's intellect. Good men judge the assertions of boys, even if they lack speech. Ashivakra, said Janaka, listened in stunned silence, as if in the land of ancient lore, where the sacred rivers flowed and the mountains stood tall, Lumasa, a wise sage, stood before King Yudhishthira. He pointed out the majestic river Samana, once known as Madhua, where Bharata had cleansed himself of his sins after slaying Vritra. Nearby lay the cardinal spot where the Lord of Sakai performed his ablutions to free himself from the weight of his actions. As they walked along the banks of the Samana, Lomasa spoke of the Manika mountain that had sunk into the earth, leaving behind the testament to its former glory. He told of Adita's sacred food cooked in the presence of the Supreme Being, and how it was said to bring prosperity to those who partook of it. The king and his companions were drawn to the lofty Kanakala range, where sages often resided, and a mighty river Ganga flowed gentle. Lomasa continued in days of old. The holy sage Sanatkumara achieved great ascetic success here in this very spot, and if you, ocean of the Ajameta race, were to bathe in these waters, your sins would be washed away. He instructed Yudhishthira and his ministers to touch the waters of Panya, lake great and a mountain, and the two rivers called Tashniganga. As they stood at the edge of the river, a hermitage came into view belonging to the sage Stilasarus. Yudhishthira's curiosity got the better of him, and he asked Lomasa about the mighty sage Yavakrai, son of Bharadwaja, who had acquired great knowledge in the Vedas. He was eager to hear the story of how Yavakrai had attained his profound understanding of the sacred texts. Lomasa began to recount the tale. Bharadwaja and Ravya were two friends who dwelled here, taking great pleasure in each other's company. Bharadwaja practiced asceticism, while Ravya and his sons studied the Vedas with great fervor. He told of Yavakrai, who had grown up witnessing his father's asceticism being slighted by the Brahmins, while Ravya's family was respected. This led to Yavakrai feeling sorrowful and aggrieved. Yavakrai decided to practice severe austerities to acquire knowledge of the Vedas. He exposed himself to a blazing fire, causing anxiety in Indra's mind. The Lord of the Celestials, concerned for Yavakrai's well-being, went to him and said, "What is the reason behind your rigorous penances? Why do you wish to destroy yourself?" Yavakrai replied, "I seek to acquire a knowledge of the Vedas." In the month of Chaitra, when the trees were adorned with blossoms, Lomasa would often tell stories of the virtuous men who roamed the land. One such tale was about Yavakrai, a young man who wandered fearlessly. Driven by his passions, as he strolled through the beautiful hermitage of Ravya, Yavakrai's eyes fell upon the daughter-in-law of Ravya, Haravasa's wife. She moved with the elegance of a Kinnara woman, and Yavakrai was instantly smitten. He approached her. Shamelessly, his words, dripping with desire, "Be attached to me." The young woman, aware of Yavakrai's nature and fearing Ravya's wrath, cleverly agreed to his proposal. However, she had a plan in mind, taking him aside. She chained Yavakrai, rendering him powerless. When he returned to the hermitage, Ravya found his daughter-in-law in tears. With gentle words, he consoled her and asked about the cause of her grief. She revealed everything that had transpired between Yavakrai and herself. Hearing this tale, Ravya's anger flared up like a raging fire. His heart seethed with passion, and he tore off a matted lock of his hair as an offering to the sacred fire. With holy mantras he invoked the divine power, and from the flames emerged a female who bore an uncanny resemblance to Paravasa's wife. Ravya was not satisfied with this creation alone. He plucked another matted lock of his hair and offered it to the fire. Once more, this time a demon unlike any other emerged, fierce with eyes that seemed to burn with an inner fire. The two creatures spoke to Ravya in unison. "What shall we do?" His anger still simmering, he instructed them to slay Yavakrai with a nod. The female and the demon set out on their mission. As they approached Yavakrai, the female used her charms to steal his sacred water pot, leaving him vulnerable. The demon then charged at Yavakrai with its uplifted spear. but he fled towards a nearby tank only to find it dry. He hurried to all the rivers, but they too were parched. The demon continued to pursue Yevekrai, obstructing his path at every turn. Frightened and desperate, Yevekrai attempted to enter the Ignotra room of his father's hermitage, but a blind Sidra warder barred his way. The demon seized this opportunity and hurled its spear at Yevekrai, striking him in the heart. With Yevekrai slain, the demon returned to Ravia, who gave it permission to live with the female he had created, and so they dwelled together. In the heart of a serene hermitage sage, Bharadwaja returned from his daily ritual duties, accompanied by the sweet scent of sacrificial fuel. But on this particular day, something was amiss. The Agnihotra fires, which normally welcomed him with warmth and reverence, remained subdued, as if sensing a change in their master's mood. Bharadwaja approached the blind Sidra warder seated near the entrance and asked, "Why do the fires seem to rejoice? Not at my arrival today, and you too, dear Sidra, appear troubled. Is all well with our hermitage?" The Sidra's hesitation was palpable as he replied, "Your son, O sage, had ventured to the abode of sage Ravia, and in Metisdemus of Bharadwaja's eyes widened in horror as he grasped the full weight of the Sidra's words, his mind racing with questions. He pressed on, "Tell me, Sidra, what happened? Was my son foolish, or was it—" The sage who provoked him, the Sidra, recounted the events, describing how the young boy had been slain by a powerful demon while attempting to enter Ravia's hermitage. Bharadwaja's grief knew no bounds as he beheld his lifeless son. With tears streaming down his face, he cradled his child in his arms and began to lament, "Oh, my dear son, you had dedicated yourself to the good of Brahmanas, and your intentions were pure, but alas, you strayed from the path I had laid out for you. Why did you venture to Ravia's hermitage, despite my warnings?" As he mourned, Bharadwaja's thoughts turned to sage Ravia, whose actions had led to his son's demise. "Evil-minded is that man who, knowing me an old man, and my son the only one left to me, still chose to provoke him," he exclaimed. His voice trembled with anguish as he proclaimed, "I shall give up my life, for without you, O my son, this existence holds no meaning." The weight of his sorrow became almost unbearable, and Bharadwaja's words turned to curses against Ravia's eldest son, whom he foresaw would soon bring about the sage's downfall. "Blessed are those who have never known the joy of parenthood," he lamented, "for they are spared the agony of losing a child." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the hermitage, Bharadwaja performed his final act of devotion, cremating his beloved son. The flames that had once warmed his heart now seemed to mock him with their fierce intensity. With a heavy heart, he stepped into the inferno, surrendering himself to the same fire that had claimed his childess. The blaze consumed him. In a distant land, where the sun dipped into the horizon and painted the sky with hues of crimson and gold, King Vryhadyamna, a monarch of great fortune, was preparing to perform a grand sacrifice. His two sons, Arvavas and Paravasu, were entrusted with assisting him in this sacred ritual. With their father's permission, they set out for the ceremony, leaving Ravia behind in the hermitage with his wife. His night began to fall. Paravasu, overcome by drowsiness, wandered into the woods, searching for his wife. Unbeknownst to him, he stumbled upon his own father, wrapped in a black antelope skin, and mistaking him for a deer, he struck him down with his sword. The weight of his actions hung heavy on Paravasu's conscience. Returning to the sacrifice, Paravasu confessed to his brother Arvavasu that he had inadvertently killed their father. Moved by compassion, Arvavasu offered to observe the vow prescribed in such cases and free Paravasu from his guilt. However, when they arrived at the ceremony, King Vryhadyamna's attendants, driven by Paravasu's malice, turned Arvavasu away, fearing that the slayer of a Brahmana would bring harm to their lord. Arvavasu, undeterred, retreated into the woods and subjected himself to severe penances. He prayed to the sun god for guidance and was granted a revelation containing a mantra for worshipping the celestial deity. The gods, pleased with Arvavasa's devotion, restored life to Ravia and declared that Paravasu would be absolved from his sinus. They ascended towards heaven. Agni and the other deities bestowed boons upon Arvavasu, including the restoration of life to Bharadwaja and Yevakrai, who had been slain by Ravia. The solar revelation which had been granted to Arvavasu was said to attend great fame on earth. Meanwhile, Lomas, a sage and narrator, guided King Yudhishthira through the sacred hermitage of the sage, pointing out various landmarks and warning him about the dangers that lay ahead as they journeyed deeper into the mountains. They encountered fierce Rakshasas, ministers of Kaura, who guarded the region with great zeal. Lomasa cautioned Yudhishthira to be vigilant, emphasizing that this was a place where even the gods and goddesses were said to reside. The monarch's brothers Decula and Sahadeva were also reminded by Lomasa to remain cautious as they traversed these treacherous paths as Yudhishthira approached the mountain Kailasa. He was greeted by the majestic sight of a gigantic Jujube tree. The air was filled with it. As the sun rose over the vast expanse of the Himalayas, Yudhishthira, the eldest of the Pandavas, stood at the forefront of his companions. His eyes scanned the road tearing ahead, filled with a mix of trepidation and longing. He turned to Bhima, his loyal brother, and said, "O Vrakadira, there are mighty spirits here invisible to us mortals. We must press on, relying on our asceticism and ignorant sacrifices for protection." His face lit up with determination as he replied, "Fear not, O king. I shall carry Panchalai and the twins wherever they may need me, and if we cannot proceed by chariot, we will walk together undeterred." Yudhishthira's eyes welled up with gratitude for his brother's unwavering loyalty to Krishna. The divine prince smiled as he spoke, "O descendant of Bharata, I shall be able to pass through this mountain without hindrance. Fear not for me." The sage Lomasa added his voice to the discussion. "We must all practice austerities if we are to access the sacred mountain of Gandhamadana." They conversed. Their eyes fell upon the majestic domains of Sovev, king of the Pulandas, situated on the Himalayas. They were greeted with honor and hospitality by the king himself, who welcomed them at the frontiers of his dominions. After a brief stay, they set out once more, entrusting their servants to the care of King Sovahus. They journeyed deeper into the mountains. Yudhishthira's thoughts turned to Arjuna, his beloved brother and warrior. He spoke from the heart of Bhimasena. "I am consumed by grief for not seeing Dhananjaya at my side. We have wandered for 5 years, visiting sacred sites and lakes, but still we have not met him." His words were laced with longing and sorrow, and his response was a testament to the unbreakable bond between brothers. "Fear not, O king. I shall carry Panchalai and the twins wherever they need me. We will go together as one family until we find our brother." With renewed resolve, they pressed on towards the Gandhamadana mountain, where the hermitage of Nara and Narayana awaited them. The air grew thick with anticipation as they prepared to face the unknown dangers that lay ahead. Yudhishthira's words echoed through their minds. "We shall see that best of mountains practicing severe austerities on foot, and we shall go to Cobra's beautiful lake guarded by the Yakshas." Their journey was about to take them into uncharted territory, where only the bravest and most devoted would dare tread. Yet with there, in the majestic realm of the celestial mountain, Mandara, Lomasa, a wise and revered sage, stood before the sons of Pandu. He guided them with gentle words. "O sons of Pandu, you have traversed many mountains, rivers, towns, forests, and sacred tirthas. Now let us proceed towards the celestial abode, where the divine sages and gods reside." As they journeyed, Lomasa pointed out the majestic river Alakananda, which flowed with holy waters, revered by hosts of celestials and sages. The high-souled Vahayasas, Valakilias, and Gandharvas sang some hymns at this sacred spot, accompanied by the lord of the gods, Indra, who performed his daily prayers. The sons of Pandu were awestruck as they beheld the magnificent river Alakananda. Lomasa explained that it was here that the Lord Mahadeva, with a bull for his mark, received on his head the waters of this river at its source in the Ganges. Lomasa continued, "O children, approach this goddess of 6 attributes and bow down before her with concentrated minds, with reverence." Yudhishthira worshipped the river Alakananda, accompanied by his brothers and the sages. As they journeyed further, they saw a vast white object stretching on all sides, resembling Meru. Lomasa revealed that this was the collection of bones of the mighty deity Narika, who had been slain by Vishu for the good of Indra. The deity had practiced austere penances for 10,000 years and had become invincible, but ultimately his strength was no match for the power of Vishnu. Lomasa described how Vishu, with a mere touch of his hand, struck Narika down, ending his reign of terror. The sons of Pandu were fascinated by this tale of Vishu's might. Yudhishthira asked Lomasa to narrate another story, the great exploit of Vishu raising up the earth, which had sunk 100 yudhanas below. Lomasa began in the Krita Yuga, when the primeval deity assumed the duties of Yama. There was no death for creatures, while births continued as usual. As the population increased exponentially, the earth became burdened and sank down for 100 yudhanas. In distress, she sought the protection of Narayana, the foremost of the gods, the eternal Lord. Vishu, with his 6 attributes, replied to her plea, "Thou need not fear, O afflicted earth. I shall act so that thou mayst be made light." With these words, He transformed into a boar with one tusk and began to swell in magnitude as he raised the earth up 100 Uranus, the heavens, firmament, and Oceans. The sun was setting over the vast expanse of the land as Vesampena began to recount the tale of the Pandavas' journey to the majestic Gandamedana mountain, O king. He said, "Those mighty heroes with their unyielding spirits and unwavering determination set out towards their destination accompanied by Panchalai, the noble princess, and the revered Brahmanas. They traversed through the rolling hills and verdant valleys. The travelers marveled at the breathtaking vistas unfolding before them. They beheld serene lakes, sparkling rivers, and towering mountains that touched the sky. The air was filled with the sweet fragrance of blooming flowers and the songs of celestial beings, while the trees laden with fruit stood tall and proud, their leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. Heroes led by Arjuna's mighty bowmen pressed on undaunted by the rugged terrain. They walked for hours, their senses heightened as they navigated through craggy regions, where beasts of prey roamed freely. The scent of gunna skin, finger caps, and the rustle of quivers filled the air as they made their way towards the sacred mountains. They entered the realm of the sages, siddhas, and celestial beings. A sudden storm brewed on the horizon, dark clouds gathered, and a fierce wind swept across the land, carrying with it a deluge of dust and tree leaves. The earth, air, and firmament were shrouded in a thick veil of dust, making it impossible for the travelers to see one another. The mighty Vimesna stood tall, his bow at the ready as he shielded Krisha from the driving wind. Yudhishthira, the just king, crept into the safety of a nearby wood with Dhamya by his side. Sahadeva, carrying the sacred fire, took refuge in a rock high outcropping Nakula, along with Lomasa and other Brahmanas huddled together under a tree, their hearts racing with fear as the storm raged on. A deafening roar filled the air like thunder unleashed from the heavens. Lightning flashed across the sky, casting eerie shadows on the ground. The rain poured down in torrents, threatening to engulf everything in its path. Rivers swelled with turbid waters, sweeping away trees and rocks as they rushed downstream. But when the tempest finally subsided and the dust settled, the heroes cautiously emerged from their hiding places. They met once more, wary but unbroken, their spirits still aflame with purpose, and so with renewed determination they set out towards the majestic Gandamedana mountain, ready to face whatever lay ahead on their sacred journey. As Vesampena finished his tale, the king sat in contemplative silence, lost in thought as he pondered the trials and tribulations of the Pandav.
As the sun beat down on the dusty trail, the sons of Pandu trudged onward, their weary bodies bearing the weight of their exile. Draupadi, the beautiful princess of Panchala, struggled to keep pace with her husband's, her delicate form trembling beneath the relentless hailstorm. Unaccustomed to traveling on foot, she sank down exhausted, and fate her plump arms supporting her on her thighs like a planting tree swaying in the wind. Ever the swift and agile one rushed forward to support his fallen wife, his voice filled with concern as he called out to Yudhishthira, "O king, this black-eyed daughter of Panchala has fallen down upon the ground. Do thou, therefore, tend her, O son of Varada." The king's heart swelled with compassion as he hastened towards Draupadi. His brothers, Bhima and Sahadeva, close behind us. They reached her side. Yudhishthira's eyes filled with tears at the sight of his beloved wife lying prostrate on the ground, accustomed to ease and deserving to sleep in well-protected rooms on beds spread over with fine sheets. He lamented, "How doth this beautiful one sleep prostrate on the ground? Alas, on my account alone. The delicate feet and the lotus-like face of this one deserving of all excellent things have contracted a dark blue hue." His voice cracked with anguish as he confessed his guilt, his addiction to dis, leading them into exile. Just then Dhamya and the other principal Brahmanas arrived on the scene, their presence like a gentle breeze soothing Draupadi's troubled spirit. They began to console Yudhishthira, reciting mantras capable of dispelling rakshasas and performing rites to restore Panchala's health. As they chanted, the cool breezes, surcharged with particles of water, caressed her skin, easing her fatigue and gradually restoring her senses. As Draupadi regained consciousness, the sons of Pritha gently lifted her onto a deerskin, cradling her in their arms like a precious gem. The twins, Nakula and Sahadeva, tenderly pressed her feet with their scared hands, while Yudhishthira comforted her, his voice filled with love and regret. But the road ahead was fraught with peril. Rugged mountains lay in wait, their snowy peaks piercing the sky like jagged teeth. Bema's strong arms flexed with determination as he vowed to carry them all across the treacherous terrain. I myself shall carry thee together with this princess and these bulls among men, the twins. He declared, his voice a reassuring rumblies. Yudhishthira nodded in gratitude. A mighty figure emerged from the shadows. Bema's Rakshasa son.
As the sun began to set on the vast expanse of the forest, Yudhishthira turned to his brother Bema with a sense of urgency. "O Bema, let us not delay," he said. "Our Rakshasa friend's son Ghatotkacha is strong and capable. He can carry our mother Draupadi on his shoulders without any trouble." Bema nodded in agreement and called out to Ghatotkacha, who was standing nearby, "My son, your mother has been tired for some time." Now Bema said, "Gently, you are young and strong, capable of carrying us all on your shoulders. If needed, please take Draupadi with you and move along the path above us, so that she does not feel uneasy." Ghatotkacha smiled, his eyes shining with pride. "I am but a mere child," he said, "but I assure you, Bema, that I can carry all of you, including Yudhishthira, Dharmiya, and Krishna, as well as the twins, and if needed, hundreds of other Rakshasas will join me to carry us." All with a nod from his father, Ghatotkacha gently lifted Draupadi onto his shoulders and began to move along the path above them. The other Rakshasas followed suit, carrying the Pandavas and the Brahmanas with ease. They journeyed on the group, marveled at the wonders of the forest. They saw rolling hills, sparkling rivers, and towering mountains. In the distance, the air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers, and the sound of birds echoed through the trees. After many hours of walking, they arrived at a magnificent jujube tree, its trunk as wide as a house, and its branches stretching up towards the sky like giant arms. The tree was covered in lush green leaves and was laden with juicy fruits that dropped sweet nectar to the ground. The group approached the tree cautiously, their senses heightened by the strange and wondrous sights around them. As they reached the base of the tree, Yudhishthira's eyes widened in awe at the beauty before him, the hermitage of Nara. And Narada was a place of breathtaking wonder, filled with celestial trees bearing flowers and fruits in all seasons. The air was thick with the scent of incense, and the sound of Vedic hymns echoed through the halls. Yudhishthira's heart swelled with joy as he beheld the hermitage, its beauty and tranquility abound to his weary solace. They entered the hermitage. The Pandavas were greeted by the great sages who dwelled there, their faces aglow with warmth and welcome. The sages offered them clean water, flowers, and roots, which Yudhishthira received with. The sun had just set on the 6th day since Arjuna's departure from the hermitage in Kimika. Forest Vasampayana, a sage and storyteller, began to recount the events of that day. As the wind blew gently from the northeast, it carried with it a celestial lotus with 1,000 petals, shining like the sun. The fragrance of this rare flower wafted through the air, captivating everyone's senses. Draupadi, the queen, spotted the flower and was overjoyed. She approached Bema, her brother-in-law, and asked him to fetch more flowers from the mountain where the wind had brought it. Bema, ever eager to please his beloved sister-in-law, set out towards the Gandhamadana mountain. He took with him his mighty bow and arrows ready for any challenge that lay ahead. As he ascended the peak, the trees swayed in the gentle breeze, releasing a symphony of sounds. The chirping of birds, the rustling of leaves, and the distant rumble of waterfalls. From his coppery eyes scanned the landscape, drinking in the breathtaking beauty of the mountain. He strolled through the romantic caverns and groves, admiring the cascades and caves that adorned the rocky surface. The wives of Yachas and Gandharvas watched him from their invisible seats, mesmerized by his towering figure. As Bema walked, he remembered that was caused by Duryodhana, their sworn enemy. He wondered what Yudhishthira would do in Arjuna's absence, and how they could obtain the flowers. Quickly, his mind racing with thoughts of duty and loyalty, Bema quickened his pace. The earth trembled beneath his feet as he strode through the forest, sending herds of elephants, lions, tigers, and deer fleeing for their lives. Trees were uprooted, plants torn away by his mighty force, and birds took to the skies in confusion. A mighty lions roused from their slumber charged towards Bema, but he was unfazed. With a few swift blows, Bema dispatched the elephants with other elephants and lions with other lions, sending the rest fleeing with slaps. As the forest grew quiet once more, Bema entered the clearing, his powerful voice echoing through the trees as he shouted triumphantly. Finally, he spotted a beautiful plantain tree on the slopes of Gandhamadana. Its Leaves swaying gently in the breeze like a mad lion, Vemma charged towards, the tree breaking down various plants and shrubs. As he went, the queen's flowers awaited him within the tree's shade, and with a final burst of energy, Vemma reached his destination. Vesampeana's tale came to an end, leaving his listeners awestruck by Vemma's bravery and unyielding spirit. In the midst of their epic journey, Vemla, the mighty warrior from the Kur clan, came face to face with Hanuman, the revered monkey chief. As they stood on the mountain path, Vemla asked Hanuman who he was and why he had taken the form of a monkey. Hanuman smiled at Vemla's inquiry, and in response said that he would not allow the warrior passage. He warned Vemla to turn back, lest he meet with destruction, but Vemla, undeterred by Hanuman's words, insisted on preceding destruction at anything else. "Do I not ask thee about," he said, "do thou give me passage arise. Do not come by grief at my hand." Hanuman, however, claimed to be suffering from illness, and could not rise. He asked Vemla to overleap him, that he must pass through. But Vemla refused, saying that he would not disregard the supreme soul who pervaded all living beings, him, noble alone by knowledge. He said, "I cannot disregard Hanuman." Intrigued by Vemla's words, asked him about his brother Hanuman, who had bounded over the Yasin with a single leap. Vemla replied that it was indeed his brother, renowned in the Ramayana for his extraordinary strength and prowess. He claimed to be equal to his brother in energy, strength, and fight. Vemla's words only seemed to amuse Hanuman, who said, "Relent thou, sinless one, in consequence of age. I have no strength to get up." Hanuman asked Vemla to move aside his tail as if it were a mere obstacle, but Vemla, proud of his own strength, took hold of the tail with his left hand, and then both arms, but could not budge. As he strained against the mighty monkey's tail, Vemla's face contorted in effort, his eyebrows contracted, and sweat dripped from his brow. But still the tail refused to move. Defeated, Vemla approached Hanuman with a bashful countenance, and begged for mercy. "Relent thou, O foremost of monkeys, and forgive me for my harsh words," he said, bowing down with joined hands. "Art thou a Siddha, or a god, or a Vana Parva, or a Gaika? I ask thee out of curiosity." Hanuman smiled at Vemla's questions and began to recount his own story. "I was begotten by the wind god upon the wife of Kisarai," he said. "I am a monkey by name, Hanuman. All the mighty monkey kings and chiefs used to wait upon Sugriva, but I befriended him as if we were like fire and wind." Hanuman's tale unfolded like a river, telling of his friendship with Sugriva, their exile in the Hrysimuk. As Hanuman stood on the mountain summit, his eyes scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of Sita, the beloved wife of Rama. His heart etched with every step he took, knowing that she was being held captive by the evil Ravana. Suddenly he spotted a figure approaching him. It was Sugriva, the chief of the monkeys. Hanuman and Sugriva had met before, but this time their meeting was different. They were both on a mission to find Sita, and Hanuman knew that with Sugriva's help they could finally put an end to Ravana's reign of terror. As they conversed, Hanuman learned that Sugriva had been searching for his wife Tara, who had also been taken by Ravana. Together they vowed to find Sita and bring her back to Rama. The newfound sense of determination, Hanuman set out towards the south with an enormous army of monkeys. They traversed vast distances, crossing rivers and mountains until they finally reached the shores of the Yasin. There they encountered Sabatai, a mighty vulture who had been watching over them from above. Sabatai revealed to Hanuman that Sita was being held captive in Ravana's palace in Lanka. Without hesitation, Hanuman sprang into action. He leaped across the Yasin, covering a distance of 100 yojanas in a single bound. As he reached the shores of Lanka, he saw the magnificent palace of Ravana shining like a celestial abode. With his incredible strength and agility, Hanuman climbed the walls of the palace and entered the throne room. Inside, he found Sita looking radiant and serene, just as if she were a goddess from the heavens. Hanuman's heart swelled with joy as he approached her, but he knew that he had to be cautious. He interviewed Sita, learning about her experiences in captivity and her longing for Rama. With his newfound knowledge, Hanuman vowed to rescue Sita and bring an end to Ravana's tyrannies. They left Lanka together. Hanuman led the way, clearing a path through the treacherous terrain. Finally, they reached the shores of the Yasin once more, where Rama was waiting for them with his army. The battle that ensued was fierce and epic, but in the end Rama emerged victorious, slaying Ravana and his followers. With Sita by his side, Rama returned to Ayodhya, his kingdom inaccessible to enemies. Hanuman had played a crucial role in their victory, and as they entered the city, he asked Rama for a boon that he might live as long as the history of Rama's deeds remained on earth. Rama granted him this wish, and Hanuman knew that he would be forever changed by his experience. Seers, past and Rama reigned over Ayodhya for 1,100 years. He was in the midst of their journey. Bhimasna's eyes met those of his brother Hanuman, the mighty monkey chief. With a heart full of joy and affection, Bhimasna approached Hanuman and expressed his gratitude for being reunited with him. He asked Hanuman to reveal his true form as he had seen it when bounding over the seas, which was said to be beyond human comprehension. Hanuman smiled, his eyes twinkling with a hint of mischief. My brother, he began, the world is in constant flux, governed by the rhythms of time. The state of affairs changes with each era, and I have adapted myself accordingly. He explained that in the Kreta age, everything was perfect and people lived in harmony with nature and the universe. There were no distinctions between castes or classes, and everyone followed a single path to enlightenment. In this golden age, Hanuman continued, people didn't need to perform rituals or acts of devotion. Virtue knew no bounds and life was free from suffering. The supreme Brahma was attainable by all, and Narayan, the soul of all creatures, shone brightly in his white hue. He spoke of the four orders: Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaisyas, and Sudras, who naturally adhered to their duties and followed a single path. As Hanuman spoke, Bhimasna's curiosity grew. Tell me more about the Treta Yuga, he asked. Hanuman nodded, his voice taking on a gentle tone. In this age, sacrifices are introduced and virtue begins to decline by a quarter. Narayana assumes a red hue symbolizing the increasing passion and attachment of humanity. He spoke of people devoting themselves to rituals and acts of devotion, seeking to attain their goals through hard work and gifts. Bhimasna's eyes widened as Hanuman described the Dwapara Yuga, where virtue decreased by half. Narayana wore a yellow hue, and the Veda was divided into 4 parts. People began to engage in asceticism and gifts, but their actions became increasingly influenced by passion and desire. The once unified path to enlightenment fragmented, and people fell prey to diseases, lust, and natural calamities. As Hanuman spoke of the Kali Yuga, his voice took on a somber tone. In this age, virtue dwindles to a mere quarter, he said. Narayana assumes a black hue symbolizing the darkness that has enveloped humanity. The Vedas, institutes, and rituals fell into disuse, and people were consumed by disease, anger, and fear of scarcity. Bhimasna listened intently, his heart heavy with the weight of Hanuman's words. He realized that the world was indeed in a state of constant flux, governed by the rhythms of time. As he prepared to leave, Hanuman smiled once more and said, "Why?" The sun was setting over the plant and grove, casting a warm orange glow over the lush green trees. Bhima, a mighty warrior from the Kurz clan, stood before Hanuman, a monkey king, his eyes fixed on his brother with an unyielding gaze. Without beholding the former, Sheikh Bhima said, his voice firm and resolute, "I will never go away. If I have found favor with thee, do thou then show me thine own." Sheikh Hanuman smiled, a mischievous glint in his eye, as he revealed his true form to Bhima. The monkey king's body began to swell, growing larger and more imposing by the second. His length and breadth increased exponentially until he stood towering over the trees, his massive frame covering the entire grove. Bhima's eyes widened in awe as he beheld Hanuman's gigantic form. He looked like a mountain, his coppery eyes blazing with an inner fire, his sharp teeth bared in a fierce grimace. The hairs on Bhima's body stood on end as he gazed upon the monkey king's enormity. Hanuman, pleased by Bhima's reaction, spoke to him in a voice that rumbled like thunder. "O Celestial One, thou art capable of beholding my size up to this extent," he said with a smile. "I can, however, go on swelling my size as long as I wish." Bhima was stunned by Hanuman's words, his mind reeling from the implications. He joined his hands in reverence and replied, "O Lord, by any have been beheld the vast dimensions of thy body. Doth thou now, O highly powerful one, decrease the self by thy own power?" Hanuman chuckled, the deep rumbling sound that shook the trees. "As you wish, brother," he said, and his massive frame began to shrink back down to its normal size. Of him, his eyes were still wide with wonder as Hanuman spoke to him in affectionate tones. "O mighty armed one, O Varata, it is even as thou sayest, O Bhimasna. The worst of Rakshasas was no match for me." Hanuman explained how he had chosen not to slay Ravana, the demon king of Lanka, so that Rava's son Brahma could claim victory and establish his fame among men. Listened intently as Hanuman offered him guidance. Now a highly wise one, being intent on the welfare of the brothers and protected by the wind god, do thou go along a fortunate and auspicious way. Hanuman pointed out the path that Bhima should take, leading him towards the Sauganthaika wood and the gardens of Kilra, guarded by Yakshas and Rakshasas. He warned them not to pluck the flowers personally, but rather, as Bhima lay exhausted on the forest floor, his massive body a testament to his unyielding strength, he was suddenly enveloped in a warm, gentle embrace. It was the monkey Hanuman, who had taken on the form of a being capable of contracting and expanding his physical frame at will. The tender touch seemed to awaken something deep within Bhima, and as Hanuman's arms wrapped around him, the fatigue that had been weighing him down began to dissipate with renewed vigor. Bhima felt his strength surge back as if the very life force itself was coursing through his veins once more. His eyes, bleary from exhaustion, now shone with a fierce light, and he knew in that instant that there was no one equal to him in physical power. Hanuman, too, seemed to be overcome with emotion, his voice cracking as he addressed Bhima with choked utterance. O hero, Hanuman sent his words trembling with affection. Repair to thee, O Nabad. May I be incidentally remembered by thee, and thee talk, O best of Kurus. Do not tell anyone that I abide here. His eyes, shining like stars in the night sky, seemed to hold a deep longing as he spoke these words, and yet there was also a sense of urgency, a warning that hinted at something greater than themselves. As Hanuman continued to speak, his words poured forth like a river, each one carrying with it a depth of emotion and conviction that was impossible to ignore. The most excellent of the wives of the gods and Gandharvas resort to this place, he said, and the time of their arrival is nigh. My eyes have been blessed by seeing thee. It was as if Hanuman's very soul was being awakened by them as prison seers. The monkey spoke. His words carried him back to a distant era, to the tale of Rama, that great hero who had delighted the heart of the world with his unwavering devotion. Hanuman's eyes seemed to gaze into the past as he recalled the darkness that had threatened to consume Ravana, and how Rama had stood tall against it. And then, in a moment of profound connection, Hanuman turned to Bhima and spoke words that would change the course of their lives forever. Therefore, O heroic son of Kunti, he said, let not thy meeting with me be fruitless. Do thou with fraternal feeling ask of me a boon. His voice was like a gentle breeze on a summer's day, carrying on its breath the promise of a new dawn. His heart, filled with gratitude and admiration for this mighty being who had taken him under his wing, looked at Hanuman with newfound respect. I take all this as already performed by thee, he said, his voice steady and calm, and then with a sense of purpose that only came from the heart. As Bhima, the mighty warrior, trekked through the vast expanse of the Gandhamedana forest, he couldn't help but think of Hanuman's incredible physique when the grandeur of Rama days or at the sun. The memory of their encounter lingered in his mind like a gentle breeze on a summer day. With every step, Bhima felt an unrelenting desire to find the enchanting land filled with lotuses that bloomed only under the most extraordinary circumstances. As he wandered through the forest, the scent of blooming flowers wafted through the air, entrancing Bhima's senses. He beheld majestic woods adorned with trees bearing vibrant blossoms, and rivers that flowed gently, their waters graced by a variety of flowers. The warrior's eyes widened as he spotted herds of wild elephants covered in mud, which resembled dark clouds pouring forth rain. Their thunderous roars echoed through the forest, sending shivers down Bhima's spine. As he continued his journey, he chanced upon woods where deer grazed alongside their mates, their quick glances darting about as they nibbled on the tender grass. The air was filled with the sweet songs of birds, and the gentle rustling of leaves in the breeze created a soothing melody that seemed to beckon Bhima deeper into the forest. Fearless and unrelenting, he pressed on, his footsteps echoing through the mountains inhabited by fierce creatures like buffaloes, bears, and leopards. The sun began to reach its zenith, casting a warm glow over the landscape. Bhima's thoughts turned to Drupadi's words of encouragement, which had become his guiding light. During this arduous journey, his mind and sight remained fixed on the promise of blooming slopes that lay ahead. As he walked, the forest grew denser, with lotus lakes scattered throughout their waters, shimmering like polished gemstones. The air was filled with the buzzing of matin black bees. As Bhima approached one such lake, its banks adorned with romantic descents and woods, the sight took his breath away. It seemed as though the very hands of nature had joined together to create This breathtaking scene, the lake's surface reflected the beauty of the surrounding landscape, creating an illusion that was almost too stunning to be true as the sun began to dip towards the horizon, casting a warm orange glow over the forest. Them caught sight of a mighty river flowing gently through the heart of the woods. Its waters were teeming with life. Swans and carandivas glided effortlessly across its surface, while chakravedas waded through the shallows. The river's banks were adorned with an array of flowers, creating a garland of fresh lotuses that seemed to have been placed by the mountain itself. And his heart swelled with joy as he beheld this majestic sight. He knew that his journey had. As Vema, the mighty warrior, son of Kunti, journeyed through the vast expanse of the Himalayas, he chanced upon a breathtaking sight nestled in the vicinity of the majestic Kailasa. Such stood a serene and enchanting lotus lake, its tranquil waters reflecting the vibrant hues of the surrounding woods. The lake was guarded by an army of Rakshasas, fierce warriors known for their formidable strength, who wore uniforms and wielded various deadly weapons. This unearthly lake, born from the Cascades contiguous to the abode of Kubra, the king of the Yakshas, was a marvel to behold. Its banks were adorned with lush greenery, and its waters were home to an array of exotic birds that sang sweet melodies. The air was filled with the fragrance of celestial sod and taika, lotuses and variegated golden lotuses, their delicate stalks swaying gently in the breezy. As Bem approached the lake's edge, he was struck by the sheer beauty of its waters. The son of Kunti had never seen anything like it before. He dipped his hands into the cool, clear water and tasted its ambrosial flavor. Refreshed and rejuvenated, Bem drank from the lake profusely, feeling invigorated by its revitalizing properties. The Rakshasas, who had been watching them with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion, finally approached him, clad in deer skins and adorned with golden armlets. Bem exuded an air of confidence and strength. The Rakshasas, donning their uniforms and armed to the teeth, asked them about his intentions. "Who are you?" they demanded. "You seem to be a warrior, yet dressed as an ascetic. What brings you to this sacred lake?" Bem, unfazed by the Rakshasas' boldness, replied that he had come in search of the lotus flowers that bloomed on its surface. The Rakshasas, intrigued by Bema's response, asked him to explain himself further. As they conversed, their leader, a towering figure with piercing eyes, stepped forward and addressed Bema directly. "You are a man of great strength and courage," he said. "But tell us, what is it about the lotus flowers that has drawn you to our sacred lake?" Bema, his voice steady and unwavering, explained that he had heard tales of the lake's mystical properties and its ability to grant strength and vitality to those who drank from its waters. The Rakshasas, impressed by Bema's words, nodded in understanding. They knew that their king Kavra held this lake in high esteem and protected it with his life. The sun began to set, casting a warm orange glow over the landscape. Bema felt a sense of peace wash over him. He had encountered the Rakshasas in the scorching heat of a summer day. Mesna, the mighty armed son of Pandu, strode towards the majestic jujube tree named Vaisala. His heart was ablaze with purpose, driven by his desire to fulfill the wish of his beloved wife, Draupadi. The gentle breeze carried the sweet fragrance of the Sagantaika lotus, a flower that bloomed only in this sacred region, and caught Mesna's attention. With every step he quickened his pace, his massive frame radiating an air of strength and determination. As he approached the lake, a group of Rakshasas emerged from the shadows, their eyes gleaming with hostility. They were the guardians of Kuvra's sporting region, where celestial sages, gods, and apsaras often indulged in revelry. The Rakshasas sneered at Mesna, taunting him for his audacity in attempting to disrupt the tranquility of this sacred place. "You may be the brother of Yudhishthira the just," they jeered, "but you will not leave with our lotuses without Kuvra's permission." Mesna stood tall, his voice unwavering, as he declared, "I do not see the Lord of Wealth here, and even if I did, a Kshatriya never beseeches another. This is the eternal morality." We uphold with these words. He plunged into the lake, sending ripples through its tranquil waters. The Rakshasas were taken aback by his boldness, but their anger soon boiled over as they prepared to oppose him. As Mesna waded deeper into the lake, the Rakshasas hurled insults and abuse at him. Their leader Kratavasis rallied them with a battle cry, "Seize him, bind him, hew him, we shall cook Mesna and eat him up." But the mighty Dema was unfazed. He grasped his massive mass adorned with golden plates and turned towards his tormentors with a single command. He halted their advance. The Rakshasas charged forward, armed with lances, axes, and other deadly weapons. Kratavasis led the charge, But Bhimasna stood firm, his strength and prowess unmatched. He swung his massive mighty arcs, crushing the arms of his attackers, and sending them tumbling to the ground. The battle raged on, with Bhimasna single-handedly defeating more than 100 Rakshasas, witnessing his unyielding ferocity. The Rakshasas were struck with awe and terror. They fled in disarray towards a Kailasa cliff, abandoning their posts. Bhimasna emerged victorious, his energy and strength restored by drinking from the lake's sacred waters. He began to gather the Sauganthack lot. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the landscape, the mighty warrior embarked on a mission to collect the rare and exquisite Sauganthack lotus flowers. The air was filled with an otherworldly energy as he scoured the land, his powerful senses guiding him through the dense foliage. The wind howled and whistled its piercing cries like a chorus of warning as Bhima's quest became a challenge to the very fabric of nature's oddly meteors streaked across the sky, their thunderous booms shaking the earth beneath. The sun itself seemed to falter, its rays obscured by an eerie darkness that descended upon the land. The air grew thick with foreboding as Bhima's display of prowess unleashed a maelstrom of sound and fury. The ground trembled, dust swirled in great clouds, and the heavens themselves appeared to bleed red. Yudhishthira, the wise and just king, gazed upon this spectacle with a sense of trepidation. He beheld the omens that portended a great battle, one that would test the mettle of his brothers, and himself. Who is it that will overcome us? He asked aloud, his voice carrying on the wind as he surveyed the assembled Pandavas. Krishna, ever vigilant, stood by Yudhishthira's side, her gentle smile a beacon of reassurance in the face of uncertainty. When the king inquired about Bhima's whereabouts, Krishna offered a reassuring explanation. O king, that Sauganthack lotus, which was brought to me today, had been sought after by Bhimasna. I ha asked him to find many more, and he may have gone towards the northeast to bring them. As Yudhishthira pondered this information, his anxiety grew. He knew that Bhima's absence was a bad omen, one that foretold a great danger on the horizon. Summoning the twins Nakula and Sahadeva, as well as Lomasa, the wise sage, he set out to follow them into the unknown with the Rakshasas, led by Hedimevasan Gataka, bearing the tired Brahmanas. The company pressed on through the forest as they journeyed deeper into the heart of the wilderness. The trees grew taller, and the air thickened with an otherworldly energy. The lake of Kivra, its waters shimmering like a celestial jewel, lay before the men there. Standing on its shore like a colossus was Bhima himself, his mass raised high, his eyes blazing with fury as he surveyed the slaughtered Ichas at his feet. Yudhishthira rushed to his brother's side, embracing him warmly and chiding him gently for his rash action. So Kuntiya, in a serene setting surrounded by lush woods and sacred turtles, Yudhishthira sat with Krishna, his brother, and the revered Brahmanas. The king's eyes sparkled as he recounted their journey to these blessed places, where they had performed rituals, bathed in holy waters, and listened to tales of ancient sages and royal sages with flowers and water offerings. They had worshipped the gods at each site, while gratifying their ancestors with fruits and roots available locally. As Yudhishthira spoke, his voice carried on the gentle breeze that rustled through the leaves. He reminisced about their pilgrimages to sacred mountains, lakes, and the majestic scene where they had bathed alongside the high-souled Brahmanas. They had traversed the source of the Ganga, beheld the Himalayas inhabited by diverse bird species, and visited the Juyug tree named Vaisala, which housed the hermitage of Nara and Narayana. King's words wove a tapestry of memories as he spoke of their passage through the Saraswati, Sindhu, Yamuna, and Narmada rivers, and other romantic tirthas. He recalled how they had been accompanied by Lomasa, a sage known for his wisdom on this journey to behold the wonders of the world. Yudhishthira's eyes shone with wonder as he described their final encounter, an unearthly lake revered by the city's gods and sages. As the king concluded his tale, an aerial voice echoed through the air, speaking in a tone both mysterious and benevolent. Thou shalt not be able to reach the inaccessible about of Vaisravana. It declared instead, follow this path back to the hermitage of Nara and Narayana at Vedarai, then proceed to the hermitage of Vana Parva, teeming with flowers and fruit inhabited by cities and Charanas. From there you will journey to Arshasna's hermitage, and finally behold the abode of Kavra's. Sudden intervention of this celestial voice sent a shiver through the assembly. The breeze responded by freshening into a gentle caress, redolent with an otherworldly fragrance that rained blossoms upon them. In awe, the earthly sages and Brahmanas exchanged glances their faces aglow with wonder. Tamya, a wise Brahmana among them, spoke up. This marvel should not begin, said, O Bharata, let this be. So Yudhishthira, guided by his counsel, heeded the celestial voice words and began to make preparations for their return journey with Bhima and his brothers at his side, surrounded by Panchalai and the revered Brahmas. The king set out towards Madara. In the heart of the mountains, where the Pandavas had taken refuge with their Brahmana friends, Yudhishthira's words echoed through the air. We are the guardians, governors, and preceptors of kingdoms, he said to Jatajura, the Rakshasa who had been living among them in disguise. If kingdoms become unprotected, where can prosperity and happiness come from? But Jatajura, blinded by his own wicked desires, did not listen as Bhima was out hunting. Jatajura saw an opportunity to strike. He assumed a monstrous form, snatched the Pandavas' arms, and fled with Yudhishthira, Nikula, Sahadeva, Draupadi, and Krishna on his shoulders.